They're going to have a 2-minute opening statement. They've got 2 minutes to answer every question that they're asked. The questions will be directed at the candidate. If a candidate would like to address a question that another candidate got, once they have answered their question, they can use the remaining time in any way that they wish to. Now, if they are mentioned by name or position or anything that's easily identifiable that you know which candidate they're talking about, that candidate gets the opportunity to rebut. So we're going to give them 45 seconds. So this should get kind of fun. So do you guys have any questions at all? You have a closing statement of 2 minutes. In a few minutes, some guys will be around with cards and pens. If you have some questions that you would like to ask, you're more than welcome to just raise your hand, and we'll get you the card and the pen. And then towards the end of the debate, we will be using your questions as well. So that's all I have. And I did want to tell you about the Oklahoma Growth and Opportunity Summit. If you guys called your legislators and told them to vote no on the step-up plan, thank you very much. We appreciate you very much. We love our teachers. We believe they need a raise, but that was not the way to do it. And so if you want to know what to do beyond the step-up plan, on February 24th, we're hosting the Growth and Opportunity Summit. And there's information on the back. Thank you.
Something I neglected to mention is the ramrod of Tara is David Van Risingham. He's up front here. Contact him if you're interested in Tara. Remember, it doesn't meet the third Tuesday of this month. And Rhonda Villamont Smith is the ramrod of the Project 12. Thank you. Now on to our moderator. He is a political junkie from way back, an independent voter and a middle-of-the-road person, works for KRMG, Russell Mills.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here. I jumped at the opportunity, always do, regardless of what political party might be involved. I absolutely believe in voting. I believe that you either stand up and vote or sit down and shut up. That is my motto. So thank you to all of you who took the time to get informed about how you're going to vote. It touches my heart, and that is what makes America great. Gentlemen, I know that these folks want to hear you talk and not me, so we're going to get right down to it. And I believe I'm going to start here alphabetically, just because I'm a little OCD that way, and I believe that means that Mr. Jones is going to get the first question. I'm sorry? Oh, yes, we are going to have opening statements for the guys, 2 minutes each. You want to go down the line, or why don't we go ahead and start down there with Mr. Jones? Hold it till it turns green.
Thank you very much for being here. And the situation we're in the state of Oklahoma, we're in a crisis. For many, many years, we can't seem to get a budget straight. We go from year to year to year, and we don't have a vision. We don't get past the next end of session. We don't know where we're going the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years. So we have to have a plan. But where we're at and the problems we're facing with the state of Oklahoma, whether your number one priority is education, whether it's health care, whether it's corrections, it all boils back to the budget. And the problem with the budget is for many, many years we've had people that actually don't know how to do a budget. We had a process by which that they do 3 different budgets. The House does a budget, the Senate does a budget, and the governor does a budget. And then they come together in the last 2 weeks of session, and there's a handful of people negotiating the budget, and all of a sudden there's a white puff of smoke that comes out, and they announce we have a budget. But there's no process by which that you can go through and debate it. What we need to do is prioritize. People say we need to do line item budgeting. Folks, what we need to do is budgeting on every single individual agency. The first is education. The law says that we'll do an education budget by April 1st. It was passed in 2004. They've actually met that guideline one time. And I know how to do a budget. I'm a CPA, and I can tell you that our process is such that we need one budget office, not 3. We need an Office of Accounting and Budgets that has good information, that provides that information to all of them so we make those decisions. It's, and yes, you include line item appropriations with those individual budgets, but until you get that down, until you get the proper funding to where it needs to go, then nothing else works. Like I said, I've seen the process. I know it doesn't work. I know how we got here. I know it's what's necessary to fix it, and I have the intestinal fortitude to do what's necessary to get this state back on the right track. Thank you very much.
My name is Gary Richardson, and I'm here to tell you we are not a poor state. We are a state with poor leadership. And having said that, I better introduce my wife, Lana. Would you stand, please? In 2004, we had $7.02 million income revenue. 2014, we had $9 billion revenue. That's a 26% increase. I'm here to tell you that we do not have a revenue problem unless it's wrongfully generated by waste, corruption, and foolish spending. I was appointed U.S. Attorney by President Ronald Reagan to handle the county commissioner scandal back in the early 80s. I'm asking the people of Oklahoma to entrust me with a tough job ahead. Someone that will take the bull by the horn and make the tough decisions. Someone that's not compromised by the leaders that got us here. I spoke to the Republican men's group 7 years ago. They wanted me to come and speak on the turnpike. I've been somewhat recognized as the expert on the turnpike, and I tell you I could spend a lot of time talking about that as corruption. That's my Exhibit A. I told the Republican men 7 years ago, I said, until we hire a leader that is absolutely sold out, doing what's best for the state of Oklahoma, and not a party, we will never, never, never see change in the state of Oklahoma. My friends, I believe that. I do believe that. But I would tell you, this state has some great future with good leadership. I do believe that as well. And I'd like to have the opportunity to prove it. The Turnpike, Exhibit A, we were told I got to shut up. They turned the red light on me.
Good evening. My name is Todd Lamb, born and raised in Enid. And these last several years as Lieutenant Governor, I've traveled to all of Oklahoma's 77 counties every year. And I don't go to a county and go to Sonic and order a limeade and then exit the county, check a box, say I went to that county. I visit the counties, I go to schools, talk to manufacturers, small business owners, farmers, ranchers. I visit people where they work, where they live, where they worship, to get a finger on the pulse of Oklahoma and see what needs are common and what needs or issues are unique and special to different parts of Oklahoma. As I've done that, my frustration has grown considerably. A lot of folks know my policy background. Some know my private sector background. Not everybody knows my law enforcement background. I'm a former special agent with the United States Secret Service. On a side note, when I was in the Secret Service, I protected Bill Clinton. Wait a minute. Don't cut into my time. If I was willing to take a bullet for Bill Clinton, imagine how hard I'll work for you. But my point is this. When I was in the Secret Service, it was required of me to have a plan with everything I did. Every assignment, I did have a detailed plan and a backup plan. Oklahoma's in much of the mire we're in because we have no plan. My plan is fivefold. To renew Oklahoma, RENEW, reform and restructure state government, starting with the budget process. Education funding coupled with reform. Neighborhood infrastructure and commitment to 77 counties. Economic diversification and workforce development. Because as a dad, I don't want to visit my kids or my future grandkids because they're living in another state. Just like you. I want my kids and our grandkids right here in Oklahoma. Thank you for being here tonight. I look forward to your questions.
My name is Kevin Stitt. Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor for me to be with you tonight. I grew up in Norman, Oklahoma. My dad was a pastor. My mom and dad are actually here tonight. Both of my grandparents were involved with agriculture. And then I went to school in Stillwater, went to Oklahoma State, got an accounting degree, moved to Tulsa, met my wife, Sarah, who's also here tonight. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary this May, and we have 6 children. Yeah, that's my Valentine. Stand up, Sarah. So we have 6 children, 17 down to 3. On a side note, Sarah always wants me to remind everybody, be praying for her during this campaign. But anyway, once I moved to Tulsa, I got into the mortgage business. I started my company, Gateway Mortgage Group, with $1,000 in a computer. Today, we now have over 1,100 employees, 165 offices across 40 states. I've lived the American dream. So why am I running for governor? You know, I travel. I visit our offices all over Texas and all over Arkansas and Colorado and Tennessee. And I see tremendous momentum coming out of these other states. The jobs, the economy's booming all around us. And then I come back to Oklahoma, the state that I love, that I grew up in, and I just feel like we're down in the dumps a little bit. You know, we've got a budget nightmare. We're going to 4 days a week in our school system. And then I look at who's going to run for governor, and it just looks like more of the same, just the career politicians running for their next election. I truly believe we'll be in the same situation 8 years from now if we keep electing the same folks. So I want to take off from my company, go serve my state, change the trajectory, change the vision. What is that vision? It's for us to be a top 10 state. Top 10 in growth, top 10 in education, and top 10 in infrastructure. I know we can do it.
All right, gentlemen, so we've heard from all 4 of our candidates, and now a few questions. I was asked to tailor these questions specifically to individual candidates. I'm sure we'll hit some of the same themes several times during the course of the evening. But I would like to go ahead and start with State Auditor Jones. And Gary, one of the things that you've talked about, and you talked about a little bit in your opening statement, stabilizing the budgeting process, but you also talked about something I thought was interesting. In addition to budgeting reform, eliminating the office of Lieutenant Governor. And I'm curious, you know, how you think that would look, why you think that's necessary, and just kind of give us a little more specifics on this budgeting reform that you'd like to carry out.
Sure, and you know, me being an auditor and doing performance audits, we look to see how things can be done more efficiently, more effectively. And one of the reforms that Step Up Oklahoma said, let's let the people vote on the governor and lieutenant governor as a team. I said, that's not a reform. What we have right now is we have a lieutenant governor that doesn't have a job. We have, basically they become campaigner-in-chief, traveling around the state for 8 years campaigning. In addition, there's 2 gentlemen here that are highway patrolmen that are paid for at the cost of about $200,000 to $250,000 a year. So what I propose is we actually give the lieutenant governor a job. If it's a Matt Pinnell, Matt would make a great Secretary of State. If it's Dana Murphy, she'd make a great Secretary of Energy. Then you don't have to have the $700,000 worth of cost. You actually now put them in a position where they have a job to do, and that in turn saves $700,000. It's the best way to save $700,000 I can imagine. You know, I come here, travel around the state. I don't even take reimbursement for that. But if we're going to show you how to save money as a state, we have to lead by example. And so I think that's a very, very good way of doing it.
All right. I think it's fair to say that Mr. Lamb might have a response to that. So go ahead and give a quick response, and then I'll have a question for you, sir.
I think that was referring about me. Listen, with all due respect, that's a problem with the state capitol. Too much gridlock, too much infighting, too much name-calling, too much blame game. As Lieutenant Governor, Ada appreciated the effort I made on behalf of the Jobs Foundation when I flew to Mesa, Michigan, and got millions of dollar reinvestment in Ada when DART purchased Solo Cup, and we helped prevent those jobs from moving to Waxahachie, Texas. As Lieutenant Governor, when I authored the School Security Commission make sure our kids are well protected with my Secret Service background, make sure our students are protected inside the classroom. After the Newtown, Connecticut tragedy, that became national model legislation that I'm proud of as a record as Lieutenant Governor. And I've been the only voice for all 77 counties for the last several years.
All right, sir, go ahead and keep the microphone for a second because I have a follow-up on that. So having served as Lieutenant Governor, do you think that there are ways that that office could be changed or reformed? Do you think that the governor and lieutenant governor should run as a pair and not individually? Go ahead.
I'm the only lieutenant governor in the country that has chaired, been elected by his or her peers to be the chairman of the National Lieutenant Governors Association and the Republican Lieutenant Governors Association, representing Oklahoma. I've gotten to know the offices of lieutenant governor all around the country pretty well. Arguably, the offices that are most effective are the offices that run in conjunction, in tandem with the governor. That's real reform for Oklahoma. Could save money at the ballot box, but also having the CEO and the COO of Oklahoma working together in conjunction, in cahoots, on a regular basis, serves the taxpayers much, much better than they're currently being served. I support the reform, and I think the governor, lieutenant governor, should run on a ticket to save money and to serve our people better.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Richardson? I didn't want to wait to give you a chance to bite your favorite apple, and that would be the Turnpike Authority. I know this is something that's near and dear to your heart. You're calling for a full audit. My understanding is that's never been done. Could you kind of explain to me why you think the Turnpike is a problem for taxpayers when it's not supported by taxpayer money?
Thank you for that question. My friends, no one in the auditorium will know this. In 1995, there was a complete study of the highway system in Oklahoma commissioned by our governor at the time, by Pete Marwick. We paid tons of money for that study. It's on my website, GaryRichandson.org. It clearly says to do exactly what I'm talking about doing. The study has been hidden for 22 years. We finally found it in the library after many hours of research. It had been misfiled. It says, take down the toll gates, free up the roads for economic development, save our state millions of dollars a year. This is not a pipe dream, my friends. Save our state millions of dollars a year because of duplicity of equipment, facilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't get a penny from the toll gates for our state, not a penny. They have 25 more turnpikes already approved for our state, my friends, and those turnpikes eat up our state like cancer slowly destroying a body. We need to open up for economic development. Can you imagine between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, potentially, I talked about this years ago, an international airport? Wouldn't that be something? Look at between Dallas and Fort Worth how much economic development came about after they took down the toll road. Folks, we can do it. Go to my website. It's not a pipe dream. It's there in black and white. Save our state millions of dollars a year. And I will do a forensic audit. I've already been visited by the head of the Turnpike. I looked him in the eyes and said, as governor, no governor has ever called for an independent audit. The governor's the only one that can. As governor, I will call for an independent audit, and the cover will be coming all the way off. All the way off.
Mr. Stitt, this is your first run at elected office, yes? So you're approaching this office of governor, chief executive of the state, from sort of a business perspective. I think on your website it says conservative outsider Oklahoma businessman. It's not a business, it is government, but can you explain to me how you think a business approach would be the right approach in tackling these massive budget problems that we're having right now?
Absolutely. You know, I think running state government is more like running a business than anything nationally. We've got 120 different state agencies in state government. It takes a long time to learn how to hire the right people, put the right metrics in place to make sure we're delivering good services. We have 25 different cost centers at our company, as conservative Republicans, we know we've got to deliver services to our citizens. We just want to do it effectively and efficiently. And I think it's more about running a business than anything. And that's why I want to be the next governor.
Thank you. So yesterday we watched our state house sort of flounder on the Step Up plan. And rather than just saying step up, yes or no, I'd like to ask each of you like a specific question about different aspects of that plan. Some of you were for it, some of you were against it. And why don't we go ahead and start with Mr. Jones. I'll just keep the order the same. Were you in favor of the Step Up plan? And you mentioned it in your opening statement. You know, you said, well, for instance, putting the lieutenant governor on the same ticket as the governor is not reform. But did you hear anything in that plan that you did like, or did you reject it out of hand? Kind of discuss what you thought as you were listening to them yesterday.
A year ago, I came up with my own plan. It's called the 555 plan. And basically what it said was the state income tax is 5%. There was a trigger that would have taken it down to 4.85 during a time of crisis. I said, keep it at 5%. Also, our gross production tax was 7%, and then it got changed to 2% for the first 3 years. What happened was we had politicians get behind closed doors with major campaign donors. We lowered the rate from 7% down to 2%. That has cost the state of Oklahoma about $350 million a year. I said if 5% is good enough for Oklahomans to pay an income tax, then 5% ought to be fair for the oil companies. So I said let's reset that rate to 5%. Let's also look at putting a tax on wind energy. We put millions and billions of dollars into investment in wind. It's time we get some return on our investment. I'm the one person that's up here that said that we have both a spending problem and a revenue problem. 20 years ago, the income tax was 7%. Today it's 5%. For every 1/4 cent reduction in income tax is $160 million. 8 quarters is $1.28 billion. You add that $350 million in the cut in the gross production tax, the other credits, we've lowered the revenues by $2 billion. We've only decreased expenses by 1.1, which leaves a $900 million hole. So if you're going to solve that, then let's do a reset on those deals, bring that rate up there, cut the other and meet in the middle. And 92% of Oklahomans believe that we need to give teachers a pay raise. Folks, if that's our number one priority, we need to do it, but you have to have revenue to do that. And I will tell you, everybody wants to say that we can cut our way out of this, but we can't. Because I know the numbers, I've looked at the numbers. In fact, OCPA yesterday came out with a plan and said that very similar to my 555 plan that says we need new revenue, and so we need to get it done. So thank you.
Mr. Richardson, you were not in favor of the Step Up plan long before the vote. You came out pretty strongly against it. What I heard yesterday on the floor was people saying the bulk of these tax increases are going to fall on middle and lower class Oklahomans. Was that your objection to the plan, or was it something else?
My objection to the plan is very simple. I do not believe raising taxes on the backs of the hardworking people of this state is the answer to our problem. Let me tell you what the answer is. It's better leadership. It's setting boundaries. It's auditing agencies. You know, the state health department hadn't been audited, I'm told, in 14 years. They found over $30 million missing. Misappropriations at the tourism department, at the agriculture department. And some of the leaders were asked, is this going on in the other agencies? This was the answer. We don't know. That's scary, my friends. We don't know. Go to my website, look at our kitchen table plan. You will see where we could raise teachers' pay $4,000 now, following some of the plans. And I'll probably talk about that more later. I'll try to stay with the question. But I was opposed to Step Up Oklahoma. It's about good management. It's about taking care of business. Folks, it's about knowing what's going on. You agree with that? It's about knowing what's going on and doing something about it. Again, I'm not compromised. I'm not an insider. I'm an outsider. There's two up here. And I will do what's best for the state of Oklahoma and for the people. I'll be the best. I don't like lobbyists particularly, but I'll be the best lobbyist you've ever had. That's a promise. That's a commitment. Thank you very much.
Lieutenant Governor, I know it's probably easy for folks to throw bricks from outside the mansion, but when you've been in the government for the last few years and dealing with the frustration of trying to solve some of these problems, from your perspective, was there anything good that could come out of the step-up plan? And if you've got time, talk a little bit about that OCPA plan if you've had a chance to look at it.
I'll talk about my plan, not OCPA's plan.
Great.
I was a candidate before Step Up. Step Up failed yesterday. I'm a candidate after Step Up. So I wasn't campaigning for it or against it. But let me be emphatically clear. As I have been my entire career, I'm opposed to tax increases. Period. Whatever tax you might like, I'm opposed to tax increases. Whatever tax increases might be proposed, I'm opposed to tax increases. So that's the first part of Step Up that everybody wanted to talk about frequently. There were reforms in Step Up that we've already addressed. The two top executives running on the same ticket, increasing the strength of the executive branch, not for more power with whomever the governor might be, but making the governor more accountable to remove a bad executive at a health department, or remove a bad department leader, or an unelected bureaucrat wasting millions upon billions of taxpayer money. So that part of the reform and Step Up, I think, is long overdue in the state of Oklahoma. Was there another question about the plan or any other plan?
Well, the OCPA plan, for instance, includes a gross production tax increase to 5%.
I'm opposed to tax increases.
So even
Very
for the
clear.
oil industry.
I don't know if could I be any more clear on that with anybody? I'm emphatically opposed to tax increases. I've got a very clear proposal on how to address our budget. Reforming the budget process, looking at the $9 billion annual in incentives, credits, and exemptions that Oklahoma allows out the door every single year. And the fact that Oklahoma has 1 million folks on Medicaid, 52% of all our births are Medicaid births. There are too many working-age, able-bodied men and women on Medicaid that should not be. That's how we fix our budget.
All right, and Mr. Stitt, you came out against the Step Up plan, and I'm curious what was your primary objection to it, and did you see anything in there that you think would actually help the situation? What would your advice to legislators be?
Yeah, I came out against the tax increase portion of the plan. You know, I met with Frank Keating's chief of staff, and he said, Kevin, if we change one rule, it'll make all the difference. The governor needs the authority to remove board members. So what happens today is the governor appoints a board member, they're there for 9 years, and then they're the ones that are hiring the agency heads. Well, that's a big, big problem. So at my company, I'm in charge of hiring all the 25 different agency heads at our company. And when you have somebody, when you don't have the right person at the agency head, then there's the people that are working in the agencies are kind of spinning them in a circle. So what happens is, I've talked to people that work in that actually got appointed as the agency heads, and then their employees there. Man, I'm getting nervous. I'm sorry. Man, I told you I'm not a politician. I don't know how to do this very well. But basically, we need more at-will employees, just like we have in the private sector. So the problem is, when you actually go try to get reform, the bureaucrats that are there don't want to do anything different. They're not going to change. You have to have at-will employees in those different agencies. You've got to have a governor that appoints those people in those different departments and then run them more efficiently. So, you know, we have a metric that we put in place on every single one of our different departments, and I know they're being run efficiently. And until you do that, I would not be for any kind of new revenue increases. So you have to first control that. And now, however, on the revenue side, there's so many different giveaways. When I look at all the different special interests and the big industries that have all kinds of different tax breaks, I do think we need total tax reform there. I had no idea, I've been in the private sector, that I could go hire a lobbyist, write my own legislation, and get it passed to benefit me and my industry.
Mr. Jones, we hear a lot of talk about teacher pay, and I don't think anybody's going to argue that we're not doing well when it comes to the pay of teachers. But there are a lot of other state employees who have gone without a raise, sometimes 10 or 12 years. I'm talking about DOC employees. I'm talking about across the board. And I'm curious, how big of a priority is that going to be to get raises to a living wage for the people that are working daily for the people of the state of Oklahoma?
Yeah, and my plan includes a raise for the state employees that have not gotten a raise. If you read in the paper the last few years, there's some bureaucrats that have gotten huge raises. There's no reason to give them a raise. But let me back up a little bit and talk about the tax situation. If I have the ability to go out and hand out $10 million worth of campaign contributions, and I get my rate lowered to 2%, is that fair? Is that fair? No, then shouldn't we reset that back to 5%? That's not raising taxes, folks. That's being fair. And you have to do that in order to come up with the money to fix some of these problems. You know, I'm not getting a lot of big campaign contributions from the oil companies because I propose taxing them at a fair rate. I'm not getting a lot of contributions from the wind energy because I'm saying they need to pay their fair share. But in order for us to get the revenue necessary to do that, we've got to make sure everybody's paying their fair share. And so, yes, you can get up and say, I'm against taxes, but if you're against the fact that they got theirs lowered and not raising it, then you're for crony capitalism. So let's fix it. So, but you have to come back and we did an audit on corrections. What we found out was that the guards are working too many hours, they're underpaid, they're leaving because, and so you have to continue to have a revolving workforce. The same thing's true at Veterans Affairs. They need a living wage there too. So we can't just talk about teachers, we've got to talk about state employees as well. Because every time you lose an employee, and that experienced employee, then you have to turn around and hire somebody else, and that costs even more. So that's one of the things we have to address, but we have to do it by making sure that we manage our money better and that we get money from those people that got the special deals. So thank you.
Mr. Richardson, earlier you talked about the increase in revenues in the state between the years 2004 and 2014. But those numbers didn't take into account inflation, which can run 2, 3, 4, 5% a year. So a dollar in 2014 is not worth what it was in 2004. When you say we don't have a revenue problem, do we need to be raising more money? And are you also a no new taxes no matter what kind of guy?
You may have heard me say that the increase was 26%. Between 2004 and 2011, it was 26%. The problem is, when we raise taxes, my friends, let's say we raise taxes on a corporation. Who pays those taxes? We do, absolutely. Let's not be fooled any longer. Corporations don't pay taxes. People pay taxes. They put the taxes on the back of the hardworking people. We know that. We know that. So yes, I'm opposed to the answer to our problem being raising taxes. Take, for example, on our kitchen table plan on my website, using the OCPA numbers, they're the most conservative group, as far as I'm concerned, in the state. They say doing an audit on Medicaid in our state would save our state, listen to this, $86.5 million a year. Yes. Has one been done? Who knows? Apparently not. We're still paying $13 million for swag. You know what that is? Putting names on pencils and coffee cups for the state agencies. Last year, Arkansas did an audit on their Medicaid. Listen to these numbers. They took 80,000 people off the rolls. 80,000. 4,100 because they were in prison. Can you imagine? 25,000 because they were registered in more than one state, probably some of them in Oklahoma. We need to clean the roads up so people who really need Medicaid, it's there for them. You agree? Thank you very much.
Mr. Lamb, you talked in your opening statement about diversifying our economy, and we've seen how the most of our eggs in one basket thing has worked out for us in recent years, talking about energy, of course. So how would you move to diversify the economy? Where do you see the best potential for growth economically in other fields in Oklahoma?
20% of the state budget is derived from revenue from the hydrocarbon industry. 20%. I'll make you two guarantees tonight. Here's the first guarantee. The oil and gas price that we're dependent upon, whatever price it closed at today, it's going to increase significantly again. Second guarantee I'll make you tonight. The oil and gas price that we depend so heavily on in Oklahoma will decrease significantly again. I'm not basing that on the Wall Street Journal I read this morning. I'm basing that on being a lifelong Oklahoman. We better get serious about diversifying our economy. We've got to realize what our assets and liabilities are. Our greatest liability is that we have just under 4 million folks. We don't have enough people to do very important verbs. These are the verbs we need people to do. Buy, want, consume, and purchase. Things that we grow, extract, manufacture, and fabricate. The manufacturing sector in Oklahoma is very diversified right now. We're making components and widgets in agriculture, oil and gas, aerospace, aviation, water utilities, air conditioning parts. The way to diversify our economy is using the model in the manufacturing sector and increase our exporting of commodities worldwide. I met with the Taiwanese delegation just 3 days ago, I think it was, in Oklahoma City. The purpose was about diversifying our economy and increasing our exports to Taiwan. Taiwan has just over 20 million folks. If we just strengthen our relationship with Taiwan, it's a game changer. With Brexit pending with the United Kingdom, increasing our exports with the UK, which they will need us more than ever, the United States, but specifically Oklahoma, it's a game changer in diversification of our economy. That's how we start to diversify and do what Texas did decades ago.
Mr. Stitt, on your website, you talk about healthcare spending and the money that's spent by the state and on Medicaid specifically. Our current governor chose not to take part in the Medicaid expansion. Is healthcare spending out of control? And if not Medicaid, then what should the state of Oklahoma do to help our citizens that need help with healthcare?
Yeah. So healthcare is out of control. We have about 800,000 to 1 million. It's hard to get actual numbers on our Medicaid rolls. That has grown tremendously. It's actually up about 194%. We have got to get control of our Medicaid and get the able-bodied adults that don't have children off our rolls. I look at Illinois. Yes, thank you. I look at the state of Illinois. They've actually done an audit of their Medicaid, and they're saving $1 billion in their state budget. Arkansas just went through an audit. They're supposed to save $500 million in 2019. We have not audited our rolls. We have got to get the people off there. But the other thing is, as I've traveled, I just finished our tour of the whole state, all 77 counties, and it was awesome getting to meet everybody. And I'm meeting with rural hospitals. They are dying. The rural hospitals are closing. We need to look comprehensively at telemedicine and exactly how we need to structure our health care going forward, because we just don't have the money to continue to spend it like we've spent in the past. Did I answer?
Yeah, if you're happy, I'm happy. Mr. Jones, what role will criminal justice reform play both in helping reduce budget problems, but also in helping reduce some of the needs by medical people? And I'm speaking specifically about mental health, substance abuse. How does criminal justice reform address those issues? Do you agree with the direction that we're heading right now?
Yeah, let me back up a little bit and talk about OCPA's numbers, since we talked about them being the conservative think tank. In 2000, they said that $5 billion was appropriated, and in 2017, it rose to $6.8 billion. It's not really 6.8, it's 6.3 because they've used accounting tricks and respent the same dollars twice. If I can spend the same dollars twice, I can solve every financial problem in the state of Oklahoma. So that's an increase of $1.3 billion. 1.2 is from 5 agencies that represent health care and social services. That leaves $100 million. Common Ed has gone but $662 million. That's 1.5%, which is inflation. Not to take into account, we've had 60,000 new students. Every other agency has gone down by $552 million. That's not adjusted for inflation. That's actual dollars. We did an audit on corrections and said, you know what, we need to quit pretending to be tough on crime and start being smart on crime. Let's start figuring out how in the world we can get people treatment when they need mental health treatment, when they need drug treatment. Come up with programs by which that we can keep them out of jail. And also, we don't have a Department of Corrections. We have a Department of Warehousing. We warehouse prisoners because what we're not doing is we're not providing them with training so when they come out they can go into a different profession. They're going back to stealing and selling drugs. So until we start fixing those problems, the cost is going to continue to go up. We're number one in the nation in incarceration of, number one in the world in incarceration of women. And I will tell you that we do not have the meanest women in the world. But what we have to do is we have to come back and address those situations, invest in doing the things necessary to put those programs in place. In turn, we can change that trend. Instead of having to figure out how we're going to build new prisons at the cost of $2 billion, we can do like Texas and start figuring out how we can start closing them down. Thank you.
If we were doing the, I'm going to ask everybody the question, this would have probably been it, but you just got the luck of the draw, Gary, so I'm going to ask you. This state is going to vote on medical marijuana in June on the 26th. As they're choosing their governor candidate, they're going to be voting on that. Do you favor State Question 788 the way it's written? Do you think it should be changed?
You asking me?
I'm asking you.
First, let me fix Mr. Jones's tag.
Yeah, there you go.
It was bothering me. You know, I'm glad you didn't call 788 a medical marijuana bill. That it is not, my friends. And that's one of the things that bothers me the most because people will not read the bill. You know, we fuss about the legislators not reading the bills before they vote on them. Imagine how many people vote on 788 thinking it in fact is a medical marijuana bill. Let me tell you why it isn't. It has no medical requirements in order to get a prescription. You can go in with this bill, you can go in the doctor's office with a mosquito bite. Yeah, literally. Go read it and get a 2-year subscription. Here's another scary thing about this bill. Any city in the state or any county in the state can raise, for example, it says you can have 6 seeds and 6 plants. Any city, any county can raise those limits to whatever they want to at any time. Is that what we want in our state? No, I totally agree. A true medical marijuana bill that is between a doctor and a patient, and if it's something that would help someone with serious illnesses, is something I would suggest we look at. This is not it. This is not it. So that's why I'm opposed to 788. That's why I'm opposed. And folks, we're in church, so you can say amen. Thank you.
Mr. Lamb, on your website, I pulled this quote: "We have to fundamentally change how the legislative session operates." And I think you've touched on this a little bit, but could you get into a little bit of detail
Absolutely.
on just how you think that should look?
This happens every year in the legislative session, and we lived it last week. The governor of Oklahoma, whomever the governor is, Democrat or Republican, man or woman, is required to give a State of the State address day one to present an executive budget. Every year. It's not until 3 to 4 weeks later every year that the Board of Equalization meets and certifies the final number the legislature can appropriate. Every year. So every year for a month, it's a scrimmage at the beginning of session. Nothing matters. This happens every session. Between the end of May, when session ends, to the next year, beginning of February, over 1,000 bills are filed every year. Ancillary bills that we don't need, that waste time. The official ice cream of Oklahoma is a great idea, but it doesn't need to be legislation. This happens every year. 5 legislators negotiate the budget behind closed doors for 3 months. The last few weeks, the door opens up, and the rest of the legislature is forced to vote on the budget. In the Governor Lamb administration, the first month of session will be policy only, 1 month of policy. You better hurry and get your bills done. The last 3 months, no policy, budget only. Working through the committee structure and subcommittee structure, we'll finally get to zero-based budgeting in Oklahoma, holding unelected bureaucrats accountable on the millions and billions they spend every single year. And no legislator can look at me and say, well, you don't understand the process. I served in the state Senate for 6 years. I wore a bulletproof vest to work. I'm a proven leader. Some legislator that does not like my reform idea, I don't sweat him or her. Democrat or Republican, I'll hold them accountable on this reform to save the taxpayer money and get to zero-based budgeting in Oklahoma.
Mr. Stitt, you're an outsider, have not held elected office before. I saw an interesting Sooner poll from January that says 40% of Republican voters are undecided at this point in the governor's race. That's a really high number, I can tell you. What's even odder is that number has gone up in recent months, not down. So, yeah, I'm guessing, for an outsider, that might be good news. But can you tell me, in your opinion, why do you think voters are so up in the air, Republican voters specifically, over what direction they want to go next?
Yeah, I want to touch that, but I also want to touch on, I don't know if you're going to ask me about criminal justice as well, because here's the deal on that. That is a very, very important issue for Oklahoma. I've had my head down kind of in the private sector, like a lot of you, and I thought all bad people are in jail, right? Let's keep them in jail. But as I've started traveling the state and uncovering this issue, it is frightening what's happening in injustice and sentencing. Somebody said it, we are number 1 in female incarcerations, number 2 overall. That's not market. I look at everything in market. We stick out like a sore thumb. I met a lady in eastern Oklahoma who had the equivalent of $200 worth of drugs in her hand. She had Sudafed on her possession, so that was kind of a manufacturing. She got a manufacturing sentence. Got 45 years in prison. Another state might give that same person drug court. Okay, we are not helping. We have to do criminal justice reform in our state. I think everybody is fed up. I've traveled all 77 counties so far, and I have been holding town meetings, and I hear from everybody out there, they're just frustrated with being last place last place out of all the other states. They're ready for real leadership. They're ready for real change. Most people just don't think that the guys that got us in this mess will get us out of it. We need a fresh approach.
So I believe we're going to get some questions from some of you up here, and I think they're looking for them. Here comes David. Because in order to get some of your questions in, we need to do that pretty soon. Okay. Thank you, sir. David Van, everybody. He goes by David Van because nobody can pronounce Van Risingham.
You good.
Thank you. They pay me to talk, surprisingly. Okay. The first question here is for Mr. Stitt. Have you or your company been sanctioned by any state?
Yes, we have. We've got about 1,100 employees in our company, and I'm super proud of what they do. We do about 3,000 home loans every single month. We get audited by 40 states every single year. Anybody that's been in business know that people don't always follow the rules. And when we get audited in a state, we pay our fines and we move on.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and ask this one. We sort of touched on it a little bit, but why don't I ask Lieutenant Governor Lamb, do you think there is room for cannabis products in medical care? Not necessarily specifically State Question 788, which we've already heard about a little bit, but do you think that that cannabis products have some medical benefit? And do you think that Oklahoma is missing out on that?
Well, that's a question for a medical doctor, not me. But as a citizenry, we want to be sensitive to families that have serious medical issues, that a medical doctor says cannabis will help that child, your spouse, for medicinal purposes. But as was said already, I'll echo part, but you need to hear it from me. I'm voting no on the state question. It's the wrong answer. It's too broadly written. Marijuana could be too easily prescribed and too widely grown if this state question passes.
Gary, I think I'll ask you this one. And I think I understand what they're getting at here, so I'll read it the way they wrote it, and then I'll tell you what I think that means. Gary Richardson, I'm sorry. Two Garys. I grew up with two Garys in the house. You'd think I'd know better. Does the U.S. Constitution give law-abiding adults the right to carry legal firearms? Or is a permit not an abridgment of that right? I think what they're asking is, does requiring a permit to carry a firearm abridge the right of the Second Amendment?
Second Amendment. I totally endorse the Second Amendment. I'm one who believes that the Constitution is the law of the land. I realize that my wife and I both have a permit. I do not believe, according to the Constitution, we should have to. But I will not lead a state into rebellion just to get what we want. I would do it the right way. I would fight as a lawyer who knows the legal grounds and the legal ways to get things done a legal way and in the right way. Like some guy, thank you. I will repeat it. I will not create a rebellious society by trying to get them to rebel against the law of the land. Romans 13 is very clear to me. Very clear. It says, obey the law of the land. And it also, my friends, tells us what will happen to us if we don't. And I don't like that part. Thank you very much.
Gentleman felt passionate enough about teacher pay to drive this question all the way to the radio station. And so, Mr. Jones, the other Gary, if you will, says he was born in 1921 in Henrietta. His parents came to Indian Territory in 1905 in an open wagon. So he feels qualified, as an Oklahoma resident, to ask this question. He says, we deserve the absolute and best needed action on a proper solution by the state legislature. If you're elected governor, will you pledge daily efforts towards both houses of legislature to increase teacher pay, and that it be paid retroactively from the beginning of the current school year?
The answer to that's yes. And I will pledge that I will not sign a budget, I will veto a budget that does not include a teacher pay raise. we'll build that in. We'll come through, we'll do the education budget first. We will have a teacher pay raise in that. We'll get that off the table before we start looking at the other issues. And like I said, we have to deal with the issues that are most important. If education is your number one priority, then let's get it done first. And then what we should be doing is then go to the next priority. We don't need to be doing just line item budgeting. We need to be doing individual budgets for every department and based on priority. And then when you get down to the low priority items, that's what you cut. This idea of cutting everybody across the board because your budgets are based on a percentage of what the budget was before. You know, I actually put out an op-ed that went out to 50 different newspapers talking about needs-based budgeting. It's a modified version of zero-based budgeting where you build your budget based on what's needed, and then you do a series of performance audits over a period of time to make sure that's what you need. That article got picked up by the Washington Times, and it goes through and says, Governor Fallon's auditor, Gary Jones, has proposed a needs-based budgeting formula, which is a great way to reduce inefficiencies and waste because it's based on what's needed. And the final line, it said, Washington, are you listening? The problem is we're not doing it in Oklahoma. But that's the way we should be doing it to make sure that we prioritize every bit of spending. Governor Fallon 2 years ago said we should focus on eliminating 10% of all the non-mission critical expenses out of government. No, we shouldn't. We should focus on eliminating 100% of all the non-mission critical expenses. If it's not critical to the mission, we should not be spending it. My office, we've cut $2 million out of my office. We don't have a chief of staff, a public relations person, legislative liaison. We're getting more done with 108 people than we had with 120 people because we know what efficiency is, and we've got to be efficient to make sure we're stretching your tax dollars and spending them exactly the way they should be spent. There should be no waste in government if we can eliminate it.
This one for Mr. Stitt then. Audience question. In what ways, in your opinion, has Governor Fallon failed as governor?
You know, I can't do my business by myself. I can't do government by myself, and I've never been there, so I really am not going to. I don't want to criticize Governor Fallon. You know, I think it takes leadership, and I've called all 101 House members. I've met a bunch of them. I've called all the state senators, so I'm building relationships with them. I'm going to dinner and lunch with them because I know we've got to work with the legislature. When you become governor, you still have to work with them and get your agenda passed. So it takes a team, right? That's what we do in the private sector. We work together. I have 5 pillars that I run my company with, and I think about leading the state the same way. We need a growth plan, education, health, infrastructure, and efficiencies. So those 5 big pillars never change. What changes are what you're going to execute every year under growth. What are the 5 things we're going to do under growth? What are the 5 things under education, health, etc.? And the thing that I just criticize or don't think it's being done, when I talk to the House members and the senators, they tell me the first time they hear the agenda for the year is in the State of the State address. That's the wrong time to do it. If we're in a board situation together, I can't just roll out my plan and expect everybody just to jump up and down and get excited. I've got to hear your heart, and you've got to hear my heart, and we've got to privately talk and discuss and game plan on what we're going to do to grow our state. So when we actually roll it out, it's already a foregone conclusion. That's how you lead. That's how I would do it. I'm not sure how it's being done today, but I know we can do it better.
Okay, this question from the audience for Lieutenant Governor Lamb. We've had years of an epidemic of illegal immigration. What would you do to combat illegal immigration? Not really a state policy thing, but it could be.
Make sure the Trump administration knows that Oklahoma is 100% committed to enforcing state law that supports federal law to make sure that illegal aliens, illegal immigrants, are not taking advantage of special systems or taxpayer services of Oklahoma citizens. Enthusiastically. And if this question was posed to all of us, it'd be a very similar answer by everybody. enforce the law. I took an oath as a federal agent. I've enforced the law. There's a perception of a Secret Service agent wearing sunglasses, an earpiece, standing next to a black limousine or Air Force One. I've got those photos. But there's a lot more to it. I'm the only candidate that I'm aware of running for governor that's ever chased, tackled, wrestled, and handcuffed a bad guy. I've enforced the law before. As governor, I'll enforce the law.
Okay, I'm going to ask this one, Mr. Richardson. Again, this is from the audience. Are you getting too old to be governor of Oklahoma? Is age a consideration? It's not an easy job.
How high do you want me to jump? I tell you what, I give all the credit to him. All the credit goes to him. I thank him every morning for the energy I have. I have a 23-year-old driver, Steve, standing back there with that red cap on. Steve, do I wear you out? Yeah. We have a lot of 16-hour days. I will tell you, I'm in great health, and the answer is no. I'm ready to go, folks. I'm ready to go. You know, I was telling my wife yesterday that it's all up here. You know, I don't get tired. I rarely ever get tired. It's up here. It's how we feel. It's how we think. And I'm about getting the next job done. When I was sales manager in Houston, over 5 insurance agencies, I had a wife and 3 children. I led singing in a Baptist church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and carried 12 hours in law school, driving downtown Houston 2 nights a week and on Saturday. People would ask me, how do you do it? My answer was, I don't ever stop to ask the question. I just do it. I just do what I have to do. Folks, I will get the job done. That's a promise. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jones, audience member wants to know, they're talking about the 10th Amendment. It says the 10th Amendment establishes state sovereignty. Basically reserved to the states, all powers not claimed directly by the federal government. So their question to you is, what does state sovereignty mean to you? How far does that go? Is Oklahoma, I guess, claiming its state sovereignty?
Well, basically it says that the laws that are not, explicitly in the Constitution rest with the state. And I believe that. But let me back up a little bit and answer a question that nobody wanted to touch. What did Mary Fallon do wrong? She did what a lot of people do. You start putting your friends, your buddies, your campaign people, and you take your campaign manager, put them in high positions that they're not qualified to do, then you end up with bad management. When I became state auditor, I have not hired a political hiree in my entire time, not one. Every single person we hire is the person that is the most qualified for that job, so subsequently we get more done, and we hold them accountable and make sure they do their job. Our boards and commissions are stacked with people that contributed lots of money to campaigns, but aren't dedicated to overseeing and do the things necessary to make sure those things are done correctly. We need to make sure that we have those people in the right places, that we hire people. I will hire people that actually work for my opponent. And I don't know of 108 people in my office, I don't know the registration of 5 of them, and I don't care. Because what we need is people that are dedicated toward getting it done, and that's a huge problem. You sit there and look at these people that got in positions that aren't qualified to be there, and then you have to hire somebody else to make sure they do the job, and it's a huge problem. And it's not just Mary Fallon, it's throughout government. You've got to make sure you have the best people in place in order to get the best performance for the citizens of Oklahoma, and that's a real problem we have right now.
I think we've got time for one more round of questions and then closing statements if we're going to get done on time, which, radio guy, I'm OCD about getting done on time. It's a thing. So we're to Mr. Stitt. You've done really well fundraising in recent months. Audience member would like to know what percentage of contributions came from corporations and businesses, how much from individuals, and I'll just throw on there, and how much from you personally?
Yeah, great question. So we didn't enter the race until July. So our first 6 months, and so I found out, fundraising goes in quarters. Everything in politics is July, August, September. Then we've just finished our second quarter of the race. And I'm super excited and humbled that we outraised everybody in the entire race. So that first quarter, July, August, September, we ended up raising $811,000. Most people, this first time they'd ever given to a campaign, they were just so excited and so disappointed with how our state's run, just looking for something different. So $811,000 was that first quarter. I matched it dollar for dollar. The reason I did that is I never ask anybody to do anything I'm not willing to do. So in business, I tell thank you. I tell my employees, I'm never going to ask you to do anything I'm not going to do. I'm going to always outwork you. So I brought the same kind of discipline into politics. And so we've raised for those first 2 quarters about $1.1 million, and then I matched that. So that's the answer to fundraising.
Thank you. Senator Governor Lamb, please give specifics on how you would root out corruption, waste, and fraud at all levels of state government.
That's easy to do in 2 minutes. Can I answer one previous question before I get to that?
It's your time.
I am not too old to be governor. So, I didn't get that one, but I wanted to address it. I've been pretty clear in how you root out corruption and fraud. One I did as a career, as a federal agent. White-collar crime is what the Secret Service does outside of protection of the president. But to get to zero-based budgeting, ladies and gentlemen, I can't stress enough, that is a game changer for Oklahoma. Reforming the legislative budget process, game changer for Oklahoma. Using the power of the bully pulpit and commissioning men and women to find fraud in Medicaid that I talked about earlier tonight, millions of cost savings. And those that truly need Medicaid receive their benefit and their service even quicker once corruption and fraud is rooted out. And something I've been talking about since last February probably, maybe March, and I used the figure tonight. Last year, some folks were panicked that the budget shortfall at the state capitol was $878 million. There was one proposal to increase taxes to the tune of $2 billion. And what I said then and I say now, let's look at the corruption, fraud, waste in the $9 billion that state government allows on an annual basis.
Mr. Richardson, audience member writes, we were supposed to ask voters 25 years ago whether to have a constitutional convention. I assume we're talking about a state convention? So, if elected governor, 5. Are you prepared to call for a constitutional convention?
You talking about Article 5?
State.
Oh, state convention.
Constitutional convention.
I will be honest with you, I don't have an opinion on that. Now you know everything I've said to you tonight, I do have an opinion on. And I do believe it. I need to study up a little more on that. That's the first time I've had that question. My apology, folks. But I would like to answer the last question about the how to deal with corruption, waste, and foolish spending. I would audit. First year in office. First year in office, I would push for legislation that every agency had to be audited at least every 4 years. I like the at least part because they don't know when we're coming back. And folks, that's the only way to keep control of what's going on. That's the only way, is to know what's going on and doing something about it that is wrong. I don't care if I know an agency head, if I've known him for 2 months or 20 years. If I find that he's done something illegally with the money of the people of Oklahoma, they will pay the price. They will pay because of the people of Oklahoma. We need to find what's causing the holes in the bottom of the can. We keep putting, it's like someone keeps putting gas in a can over and over again. One day he said, whoa, why am I having to put some more gas in this can? Maybe I should check the bottom of it. We will check the bottom and find the holes and plug them and hold those responsible that put them there. That's a promise.
Oklahoma is a very unique state with its Indian nations and sovereign territory. I come from an area where they have reservations, completely different. And Oklahoma deals with these tribes on several different levels. And this question from an audience member, how would you, and this is for Auditor Jones, how would you renegotiate the gambling compact with the tribes? And I'll go ahead and throw in the tobacco compact too. Do you think that those need to be renegotiated?
Absolutely, they need to be renegotiated. We have the worst compact of any state in the nation. We get a smaller percentage of the revenues than anybody else. You know, Arizona has 210 people that monitor the contracts, their compacts. Oklahoma has 3. And those people are under the state finance because the gentleman that negotiated the contract was the director of state finance. We actually audit the casinos at the horse racing tracks. And we found where they've made an accounting error that cost $4 million that we got back because we caught them. You know, and we talk about auditing. I'm glad that all of a sudden auditing is so in vogue. The statute for auditing is on the books for performance audits because I was the one that told Joe Dorman about it that got it passed in 2003. In 2011, I tried to get it passed where we could do a performance audit on every single agency on a rotating basis. But instead, the legislature, the Senate, did not hear it. What they did is they created these performance teams under OMES. OMES, they don't like to be called OMES. We call them one big mess. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. And now they have these performance teams, and we're not quite sure what they do because they haven't found anything. You know, Arkansas has 260 auditors. We have 108. Their budget is $21 million, their appropriations. Ours is 3. No one in the state of Oklahoma in the last 20 years has uncovered more corruption and waste than I have. How many of you remember a guy named Gene Stipe? Back in 2002, when I ran for auditor, my opponent got half of his money illegally from a guy named Gene Stipe. I put the pieces of the puzzle together, went to the FBI, that resulted in 8 convictions, including Gene Stipe, his brother. We sent Gene Stipe to prison, a prison hospital. I did that on my own. Nobody knows how to root out waste and corruption any more than I do. Nobody knows how to manage and structure the audits so they can be done to make sure we do what's done and not just run out there haphazardly doing something that doesn't get results.
Gentlemen, it's been really interesting. I think I've learned a lot. I hope that folks here have learned a lot. Time has come for each of you to go ahead and wrap up your thoughts for the evening. Give us a closing statement. We'll go in the opposite order of which we did the opening statements. And then, so I believe we will start with Mr. Stitt.
Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. I am tired of our state being in last place, and I know you are too. I am the only one in the race that's gone to all 77 counties holding town hall meetings. They are tired too. They tell me, they say, Kevin, we have got to fix our state. We've got to fix education. We've got to get our state growing again. I just don't think we're going to get anywhere different if we don't get a change in leadership, if we don't have a new business person, an outsider. So I'll give you 3 reasons. Number 1, our state has been controlled by lobbyists, by special interests, by big industries. I want to be the governor for all 4 million Oklahomans and always focus on what's best for the next generation and not the next election. If you don't have that type of perspective, you're always going to be thinking about this industry or this special interest group. Number two, we've got to get our state growing again. I'm super excited about what happened at the national level with Trump lowering the corporate rate from 35 to 21. That is a huge, huge deal. There is a move to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. There is a move to repatriate dollars. Oklahoma has a great opportunity over the next 10 years to capture that growth. It's going to take a business guy. I'm the only guy in the race that has created 1,100 private sector jobs, that knows how to talk to CEOs, right? We need to do it. And the last thing is vision. If we don't change and have a big vision in our state, if we don't have a vision to be top 10, we're not going to get where we want to go. So I have that vision. I want us to be top 10 in growth, top 10 in education, and top 10 in infrastructure. That's why I want to be your next governor. I know we can do it. Thank you guys very much.
Good job. Thank you again for coming out this evening. You've heard part of my plan. It's important to have a plan. I think I mentioned earlier at the opening remarks, Proverbs 29. Where there's no vision, the people will perish. With that vision, a plan's required, a detailed plan. And what I have offered tonight, what I've offered on this campaign trail, as I've gone to all 77 counties every year and had town hall meetings almost every year as lieutenant governor, not rhetoric, but a proven conservative. Pam Peterson's here, one of my Tulsa County chairwomen. I'm honored she's supporting this campaign. Pam was the House author of pro-life legislation. I was a Senate author for years. In the state Senate, I led the first override of a governor's veto in 14 years on pro-life legislation. I don't tell you I'm pro-life. I've lived it. I'm a proven conservative leader. I'm a life member of the NRA. More than that, I'm a gun collector. I took my daughter hunting 3 weeks ago. She killed 5 clay pigeons. I'm pro-Second Amendment, proven conservative. And I have a detailed plan to renew Oklahoma. Reforming our budget process, you heard details tonight. Education funding a priority, we talked a little bit, but not enough. My wife's a public school teacher. 77 county commitment. To grow Oklahoma, we must grow Oklahoma in 77 counties. Economic diversification, you heard my detailed plan tonight as a proven leader, a proven visionary. And workforce development, well, hopefully in another forum we can talk more about career tech and higher education and my detailed plan in those arenas. We must move Oklahoma forward. I'm optimistic. I believe our best days are ahead of us. I believe Oklahoma's on the cusp of a renaissance. But it's important what path we choose. And here's why it's important. We must make the best thing in Texas I-35 North. God bless you and thank you.
Senator Stipe was mentioned. When the first 2 times Don Nichols came to me and asked me to take the U.S. Attorney's job, I turned it down. Had a wife and 3 children, and it was paid half of what I made as a lawyer. The third time he says, Gary, we really need you to take this job in order to handle the county commissioner scandal. Senator Stipe had already been to the county commissioners in the eastern part of Oklahoma and said, don't worry about eastern Oklahoma. He had never lost a case in the federal court in eastern Oklahoma. I prosecuted 15. He defended 15. We got 14 convictions. President Reagan entrusted me to do something to clean up the corruption in Oklahoma and the county commissioners. I'm asking you to entrust me to do the same job for our state. There's been said on stage by one person, he's the only outsider. I've been a former assistant insurance commissioner for the state. I've been a former state prosecutor, and I've been a former U.S. attorney. Anybody think that keeps me from being an outsider? I don't think so. I've never held political office. I've never held political office. Why this job? A year and a half ago, I had no idea I would be running for governor. About a year and a half ago, I said to my wife, I want to go to Branson and see the story of Moses. On the way home for 2 days, I was eaten up with the words, God using Moses to set his people free. I've said for years, our state is in bondage to corruption, waste, and foolish spending. And I believe that, my friends. Sunday morning, we stood in church to sing, and it really hit me. And I stood and wept. We got home, I told my wife, sweetheart, I've got to do it. I do not believe I can be at peace and not give everything I have to try to get the job to turn things around in our state. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
You know, when I was 18 years old, I went to work for Bell Telephone while I was going to college as a telephone operator. At 20, I was a manager of 120 operators. At 21, I was on state staff doing independent studies in the Office of Planning and Budgets. At 28, I quit my job and started with a high school kid and built that up to 50 employees. So yes, Mr. Stitt, I was in business for 26 years before I ever got involved in politics. In 1994, I, like a lot of people, were fed up with what's being done, so I ran for office, didn't take a penny in campaign contributions, and beat a 10-year incumbent, and went in there and started doing the things necessary to fix things. I built more bridges in my district than anybody in the history of the state, built the county jail that needed to be built, and did the things necessary. As state auditor, we came in with a 5-year backlog. We cleared it up and have got things back on the right track. Not everybody in state government is a crook. Not everybody in state government is somebody that has caused this, because I've stood up and told them for years, you're messing up, you need to do it better. In fact, so bad they wanted to kick me out of the Capitol. You know, people say, well, that's petty. No, what was petty to me was the fact that they wanted me to move out and have to spend $50,000 worth of tax dollars because they wanted bigger, fancier meeting rooms. You know, folks, the problem we're facing right now is a multi-level jigsaw puzzle that has many moving pieces. I'm the one guy up here that can tell you how we got in the mess, how to get out of it. And I have the intestinal fortitude to do what's necessary to fix it. We cannot afford on-the-job training from somebody that doesn't know what to do. I know it sounds great to say, you know, I can look at this and see, but unless you know. In fact, I was at one candidate forum, and a state representative came up and said, it'll take everybody else a year and a half to know what's going on in state government that Gary Jones already knows. I didn't grow up wanting to be governor. I literally prayed that somebody else would get in this race that understands the magnitude of where we're at and how to fix it. They didn't, so I'm running. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you sincerely.